Books Review, and in this show I am reviewing the poem Felix Randal by Gerard Manley Hopkins. There's an interesting news story out this week. The Pope is carrying out a survey into the attitudes of the 1 billion Catholics in the world. This is quite an unusual event, really. You sort of tend to think of the Catholic Church as an organisation which hands down its judgments to its followers, not one that has much of a democratic relationship with them. Even though the survey has only just started and no data is available from it yet, already some interesting facts have emerged. For instance, in Britain they reckon that only about 5% of Catholics actually accept the full church dogma. This is something which is very much a personal experience for me. Whenever I speak to Catholics, I'm always slightly surprised that they don't remotely seem to follow what the stated aims and objectives of the Catholic Church are. They cheerfully ignore the requirements of their faith, and indeed often seem to be totally unaware of it. I hadn't realised quite the extent of this. I thought it was just that I happen to know a particularly bad bunch of Catholics, but it seems it's a lot more widespread than I thought. And this is quite interesting and also quite surprising. Why does the Church, which, okay, it's in decline, but the decline is fairly gentle, but you would have thought with such a huge mismatch between the attitudes it espouses and the attitudes of its adherents that it would be in more of a crisis than it actually is. What is it that holds the Catholic Church together? It is not at all obvious, but I think I have got an idea. And to do that, I want to look at a piece of writing by a Catholic poet. He's one of my favourite poets, actually. He's a guy called Gerard Manley Hopkins. He's not enormously well known nowadays, though he had his day in the Victorian era. And the poem is called Felix Randal. First, a bit about Gerard Manley Hopkins himself. He was from a prosperous middle-class family and went to Oxford, where he was initially a brilliant student. However, he was troubled by many problems, one of which was that he was a homosexual. This was something which he found very hard to handle, and it's likely that he never ever consummated this desire on his part. At some stage during a deep crisis, he converted to Roman Catholicism and studied to become a Jesuit, though despite his early promise as an academic, he actually managed to fail his theology degree, which made him pretty much a sort of grassroots Jesuit rather than a Jesuit who was going places. And as part of becoming a Catholic, he burnt all his previous poetic works, which is a great shame. I'm sure they would have been very, very good indeed, and I suspect they were probably better than what he came up with later, though what he came up with later was good enough. So consequently, he was a sort of fairly low-ranking member of the Catholic hierarchy, whose main claim to fame is the poems he wrote. He died fairly early and didn't write that many poems. The one I've picked on is one that I find very moving. It's called Felix Randal, and Felix Randal is a farrier, and the point of view of the poem is that of a priest looking back on the life of this man just after he's died. The opening lines are the report that he's now died. It's obviously a death that's been expected. The priest is deeply moved and very involved with the life of the farrier, that he knows his dealings with him right back to his youth. There's a hint that when he was a young man he was perhaps not as noble as he had been in later life, and there's also a clear indication that his last days had been fairly grim and he'd suffered badly. I don't know if this is based on a real life event. It certainly has all the hallmarks of a very real sort of tragedy. What is it about this poem that makes it a distinctly Catholic poem? I think what it is that it's very intensely focused on the individual. A furrier would not have been the lowest strata of Victorian society, but it certainly wouldn't have been one of the elite. And for the priest, who would have been regarded as sort of a member of the establishment, or rather would be if he wasn't a Catholic priest, wouldn't normally have a close social contact with such a man. And the fact that the author of the poem is so engaged with this person from a different class is, I think, quite significant. And it's something that you see again and again in literature that's written from a very Catholic point of view. The individual is very important. It doesn't matter who they are, and what happens to them matters, and it affects the society of the Christians. Catholic, of course, literally means all-embracing. So the ideal of Catholicism is that everybody is a Catholic and everybody belongs to this community, and everybody in that community from the top to the bottom is an important person, and their behaviour and their fate is a matter of concern to all of us. This is something that you see it in Graham Greene, you see it in just about anybody who's got that sort of angle. It's not something that I think you see anywhere near as strongly in Protestant Christians. It seems to be something that they are not anywhere near as concerned about. And of course, for most other ideologies, political ideologies, quite often the individual can be regarded as not that big a deal. And I can see how this is something that's very deeply appealing and something that would hold you to a society and organisation. So what do I make of this as someone looking in from the outside and who is basically quite critical of Catholicism? I think it's sort of, to me, I think this is the appeal of it. It's not something that I think particularly comes from the Bible. I think it's something that Catholicism as a community has developed over the years, and it's something that has been lost from the people who've broken away from it, and it's something that is lost when you transfer from Catholicism to a more modern, more secular approach. And I think it's something that's genuinely a loss. It's an approach that seems very, very deep, and I can see how someone could cling to that community even if they disagree not just with a little bit of the dogma, but with perhaps with every single tenet of it, and perhaps even with the most central thing, which is belief in the divinity of Jesus Christ. You can probably remain a member of the Catholic community even if you don't believe Jesus actually was holy at all. And I think this is something that's easy to underestimate when you look at it. If you are a Catholic, I think it's perhaps worth wondering what exactly your motives are. Why do you cling to this? I mean, it's not just a medieval dogma, is it? It goes back even before that. Is it just that you like belonging to something? I don't know. That's not my position to tell anybody else what to believe or what to think. But I think it's something that is perhaps only noticeable to someone who's observing like myself from the outside. So if it's of use to you, please feel free to do with it as you will. I hope you found this slightly odd and unusual episode of my history books review of some interest. It's, as you can probably tell, not scripted. I've just speaking off the cuff. If you don't like it, don't worry, I won't do many more of them. But in the meantime, thanks for listening.